At the family dinner, I heard my greedy granddaughter say, "Thank God she's going to the nursing home. That old woman is just one more mouth to feed." 4 days later, she was the one begging. The words hung in the air, suspended in time, as if waiting for someone to acknowledge them. But no one did. Not my daughter Catherine, who briefly paused while scooping mashed potatoes onto her plate. Not my son-in-law Richard, who merely cleared his throat and reached for the salt. It was as if I had suddenly become invisible, sitting there at the end of the table that had once been mine. I gripped my fork tighter, feeling the cold metal press against my fingers. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. At 75, I should have been used to the gradual erosion of my dignity, but this cut deeper than anything before. Amanda, my own granddaughter, didn't even lower her voice, as if I weren't sitting just 3 chairs away, as if I were already gone. "She barely eats anything anyway," she continued, talking to her brother Michael. "And Dad says the insurance will cover most of it." My hand trembled as I set my fork down beside my barely touched chicken. 2 years ago, after my mild stroke, I'd sold my house, the home where I'd raised Catherine alone after her father died, the garden I'd tended for 30 years, to help Catherine and Richard when their business was failing. The money from that sale was supposed to secure my future, with the promise that I would always have a place with them. "Mom?" Catherine's voice broke through my thoughts. "Are you feeling okay? You've hardly touched your food." I looked at my daughter's face, searching for some recognition of what had just happened, some defense of her mother. But her eyes held only mild concern, nothing more. "I'm fine, dear," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just not very hungry tonight." From across the table, Amanda met my gaze for just a moment before looking away. Not in shame, but in irritation, as if I'd somehow overheard something I wasn't meant to. At 25, with her designer clothes and constant phone upgrades, she had never known real struggle or sacrifice. "We found another place to look at," Richard announced, cutting into his chicken with precise movements. "Sunshine Meadows, they have an excellent reputation, and there's a garden you can visit, Evelyn. You'd like that. A garden I could visit. Not tend, not plant, not nurture, just visit, like a stranger passing through." "How thoughtful," I replied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. 2 years of living under their roof had gradually stripped away my role in this family. First, I was a respected matriarch, then a helpful babysitter, then a convenient housekeeper, and now, just a burden. Just another mouth to feed. Later that night, alone in my room, the converted study that never quite felt like mine, I sat on the edge of the bed and let the tears come. Quiet tears, because I'd learned long ago that loud grief only makes others uncomfortable. Through the thin walls, I could hear Amanda's television blaring, some reality show about rich women arguing over trivial matters. I reached for the framed photo on my nightstand, James and me on our wedding day, both of us so young, so full of hope. He'd been gone for 23 years now, taken by a heart attack when Catherine was just 15. I'd spent the decades since then working double shifts as a nurse to put Catherine through college, postponing my own dreams, sacrificing my own needs. "What would you do, James?" I whispered, running my thumb over his smiling face. The answer came not in words, but in the memory of his steady determination, his refusal to be diminished by others. James would never have accepted being treated this way, not even by family. Especially not by family. I set the photo down and straightened my shoulders. The nursing home was not a foregone conclusion, no matter what Amanda thought, no matter what plans Catherine and Richard were making. I still had my wits, my health was improving daily, and somewhere in all this, I still had my dignity. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual and made breakfast for everyone as I always did. But as I cracked eggs and toasted bread, my mind was already elsewhere, formulating a plan that had begun to take shape during the night. "Morning, Grandma," Michael mumbled as he shuffled into the kitchen, hair tousled from sleep. At 23, Michael was quieter than his sister, less entitled. He grabbed a plate and smiled at me sheepishly. "Thanks for breakfast. You didn't have to." "I enjoy it," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. I did enjoy feeling useful, needed. "About what Amanda said yesterday," he began, then trailed off. "So, He had noticed. Someone had noticed. "It's all right," I said, though it wasn't. "No, it's not," he replied, surprising me. She shouldn't have said that. None of them should be making plans without talking to you directly. I patted his hand, this unexpected ally. "Thank you, Michael." After breakfast, when the house emptied, Catherine to her part-time job at the boutique, Richard to the struggling business he'd rebuilt with my money, and the grandchildren to whatever occupied their days, I sat at the kitchen table with the phone directory and my old address book. First, I called Margaret Lewis, my former colleague from the hospital who now managed a retirement community across town. Then I called my doctor and requested my medical records. Finally, I called Timothy Grayson, my late husband's friend and our family attorney. 4 days after I heard those crushing words at dinner, Amanda came to my room, her usual confidence conspicuously absent. She knocked tentatively, something she'd never done before. "Grandma?" Her voice had lost its sharp edge. "Can I talk to you?" I set aside the book I was reading and nodded, gesturing to the chair across from me. "I need help," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "I lost my job yesterday. They downsized the whole department." I waited, saying nothing. "I've got rent due next week and—" She twisted her hands in her lap, looking younger than her 25 years. "Mom and Dad said they can't help right now. Something about business expenses." So here she was. The granddaughter who had dismissed me as just another mouth to feed was now begging for my help. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'm sorry to hear about your job," I said evenly. "I thought maybe you might have some savings, just to tide me over." Her eyes darted around the room, not quite meeting mine. "I'll pay you back, of course." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Not just entitlement, but fear. Fear of failing, fear of struggling. "Amanda," I said gently, "I don't think giving you money would help you right now." Her face fell, then hardened. "Right? Because you're saving for the nursing home." "No," I replied, "because I've made other arrangements." "Other arrangements?" Amanda's perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together in confusion. "What are you talking about?" I wasn't ready to reveal my plans yet, not until everything was in place. "That's between me and my financial advisor," I said calmly. Amanda's expression shifted from confusion to irritation. "Since when do you have a financial advisor?" Her tone was accusatory, as if I'd been hiding something from her. "Since I decided to take control of my own future," I replied simply. She left my room in a huff, and I heard her on the phone moments later, no doubt calling her mother to report this unexpected development. It gave me a small, quiet satisfaction, this first step toward reclaiming my agency. That evening, Catherine came home earlier than usual. She knocked on my door with the tentative rap that I'd come to recognize as her way of approaching difficult conversations. "Mom? Can we talk?" I set aside my knitting, a blanket for the children's ward at my old hospital, and nodded. "Of course, dear." Catherine sat on the edge of my bed, looking uncomfortable. At 48, my daughter still had the same anxious furrow between her brows that she'd had as a teenager. "Amanda said you mentioned something about other arrangements?" "Yes," I confirmed, offering nothing more. Catherine sighed, exasperated. "Mom, if this is about what we discussed before, the nursing home really is the best option. After your stroke, my mild stroke," I corrected. 2 years ago. "Yes, but the doctor said—" "Dr. Harrison cleared me at my last checkup," I interrupted. "My blood pressure is normal, my mobility has improved, and my cognitive function is excellent. But you need assistance," Catherine insisted, "and neither Richard nor I can be home all day to take care of you." I felt a familiar pang of sadness. When had I become a task to be managed rather than a person to be loved? When had my daughter forgotten all the nights I'd stayed up with her when she was sick, all the double shifts I'd worked to put her through college? "I've never asked you to take care of me," I said softly. "In fact, I do most of the cooking and cleaning in this house. I watch the cat when you travel. I even helped Michael with his taxes last month." Catherine had the grace to look embarrassed. "I know you help around the house, Mom, and we appreciate it, but that's not the same as what? Living independently? Making my own decisions?" I kept my voice level, though the hurt ran deep. "As having proper care if something happens," she finished. I looked at my daughter and saw a stranger. Where was the compassionate girl who'd wanted to be a nurse like me? Where was the young woman who'd cried on my shoulder when her father died? "Catherine," I said carefully, "do you remember why I sold my house?" She glanced away, suddenly interested in a loose thread on her sleeve. You said you wanted to help us after Richard's business troubles. No, I corrected gently. I said I would help you because family supports each other in times of need, but the understanding was that I would always have a place with you. Not as a guest, not as a burden, but as a member of this family. Catherine fidgeted, her discomfort obvious. And you do have a place with us, Mom. We're just concerned about your health. Are you? Or are you concerned about the inconvenience of having me here? Her head snapped up. That's not fair, isn't it? I reached for the folder on my nightstand and removed several bank statements. Catherine, what happened to the money from the sale of my house? She blinked rapidly, caught off guard. It went into the business like we discussed. All of it? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Well, no, not all of it, she admitted. Some went to paying off debts, and then there were the renovations to this house to make it more accessible for you. The renovations that consisted of moving a bed into the study and installing a grab bar in the bathroom. Hardly the kind of modifications that would justify the $275,000 my house had sold for. And the rest? Catherine was silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. The Caribbean cruise last year? Amanda's new car? The kitchen remodel with the marble countertops I advised against? I listed these expenditures not in anger but with a profound sadness. The money that was meant to secure my future is gone, isn't it? Mom, we didn't... Please don't lie to me, I said softly. Not now. She sighed, deflating like a balloon. We thought we'd have time to build it back up. Richard's business is doing better now, and we were going to start setting money aside for you. But then you decided a nursing home would be more convenient. I finished for her. It's not like that, she protested, but her heart wasn't in it. We both knew the truth. I nodded toward the door. I'd like some time alone, please. After Catherine left, I sat still for a long while, letting the weight of it all settle around me. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the casual dismissal of my worth, my dignity, my very existence in their lives. The next morning, I woke up with a strange lightness in my chest. The hurt was still there, but alongside it was a growing sense of purpose. I dressed with care, choosing my blue dress with the white collar, the one James had always said matched my eyes. At breakfast, Richard was unusually present, lingering over his coffee rather than rushing out to work. Catherine kept shooting him glances, and I realized they'd discussed their approach, the united front. Evelyn, Richard began, using his business voice, Catherine told me about your concerns regarding the money from your house. I buttered my toast calmly. Yes? I want to assure you that it was always our intention to repay that investment, he continued. The business has had some challenges, but we're turning the corner now. I nodded, taking a small bite of toast. I'm glad to hear the business is doing well, Richard. He seemed encouraged by my mild response. We've been looking into several nursing home options, and we think Sunrise Meadows might be the best fit. They have excellent facilities, and as I mentioned, there's a nice garden, a garden I can visit. I repeated his words from a few days ago. Exactly, he said, missing my tone entirely. We've scheduled a tour for next week. I set down my toast, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and folded my hands on the table. I won't be going on that tour, Richard. He blinked, thrown off script. I don't understand. I've made other arrangements, I said simply. The morning after my conversation with Catherine, I woke to hushed voices outside my room. I sat up slowly, joints protesting, and listened. We need to figure out what she's planning, Richard was saying, voice low but audible. If she's making financial decisions without consulting us, she doesn't need to consult us, Catherine interrupted. That's the problem. She's not legally incompetent, Richard. But the nursing home is already arranged, he insisted. The deposit is paid. If she's being stubborn because of something Amanda said, I don't think it's just that, Catherine sighed. She found out about the money. A pause, then Richard's voice, sharper. What do you mean? The money from her house. She asked me directly what happened to it. Another pause, longer this time. What did you tell her? The truth. Well, part of it. That we used it for the business, for debts, for renovations for her. Richard swore under his breath. Catherine, we agreed we wouldn't. She already knew, Richard. What was I supposed to do? Lie to her face? Their voices faded down the hallway. I sat there, oddly calm. Their panic confirmed what I'd suspected. They had never intended to safeguard my future with that money. It had been absorbed into their lifestyle, spent on luxuries, with only the vaguest intention of someday making it right. I dressed slowly, choosing a comfortable sweater and slacks. As I brushed my silver hair, I studied my reflection. The face was lined with age, but the eyes were clear and determined. Not the eyes of someone ready to be warehoused and forgotten. In the kitchen, Catherine sat alone at the table, a cold cup of coffee in front of her. "Good morning," I said pleasantly, filling the kettle for tea. "Morning," she mumbled, watching me carefully. I went about my morning routine while Catherine fidgeted with her coffee mug. "Mom," she finally said, "about yesterday." I turned to her, waiting. "I want you to know that we do care about your well-being," she said, sounding rehearsed. "The nursing home isn't about getting rid of you. It's about making sure you have proper care." I sat across from her. "I understand that you believe that, Catherine." Her brow furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that I think you've convinced yourself this is about my welfare, when it's really about convenience." I took a sip of tea. "We often tell ourselves stories that make difficult decisions easier to live with." "That's not fair," she protested. "After your stroke," my mild stroke, I corrected. 2 years ago, after which I recovered remarkably. Well, according to Dr. Harrison. "Catherine," I continued gently, "do you know what I did at the hospital before I retired?" She blinked, thrown by the change of subject. "You were a nurse." "Yes, but specifically in my last 10 years, I worked in geriatric care. I helped families navigate exactly the kind of decisions you're trying to make now." She was silent, waiting. "I've seen families who truly had no choice but to place their loved ones in facilities because they required around-the-clock medical attention. I've also seen families who chose that option because it was easier than adapting their lives to include an aging parent." I met her gaze steadily. "I know the difference, Catherine." She looked away first. "It's not that simple," she muttered. "It rarely is," I agreed. "But what hurts more than the money is feeling that my presence in this family has become a burden, rather than a blessing." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, that's not—" "When was the last time you asked for my advice about anything?" I asked quietly. "When was the last time anyone in this house besides Michael treated me as someone with value to offer, rather than as a problem to solve?" She had no answer for that. "I've made my decision, Catherine. I'm not going to the nursing home. In fact, I'll be moving out at the end of the month." Her head snapped up. "Moving where? How? With what money?" "I have resources you don't know about," I said simply. She pulled away, hurt and anger flashing across her face. "So this is punishment? For spending the house money?" "No," I said firmly. "This is me taking control of my remaining years. This is me refusing to be discarded." Before she could respond, Amanda burst into the kitchen, face drawn. "Mom, I can't. Find my car keys and I'm late for my interview." Catherine turned to her, visibly relieved by the interruption. "Did you check your purse? Your room?" "Everywhere," Amanda said, frantically searching through the junk drawer. I silently finished, my tea watching the scene unfold. Amanda's interview. The first real sign that she was actively seeking work. That was progress, at least. "These them?" Michael appeared in the doorway, dangling a keychain. "They were in the bathroom." Amanda snatched them with a quick, "Thanks," and rushed out. After breakfast, I called Margaret at Willow Creek. "The apartment will be ready next week," she told me cheerfully. "And we've put you on the schedule for Tuesdays and Thursdays in the Wellness Center, just a few hours each day to start." "That sounds perfect," I said, feeling a flutter of excitement. "And you're sure about the garden plot?" "Absolutely," Margaret confirmed. "Each resident gets a small plot if they want one. Yours is right outside your patio door. Not huge, but enough for some flowers and a few vegetables. A garden of my own again." The thought filled me with joy I hadn't felt in years. That afternoon, Timothy arrived promptly at 2, carrying his worn leather briefcase. Richard was at work, and Catherine at her boutique job. Only Amanda remained in the house, sequestered in her room. "Evelyn," Timothy greeted me warmly, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. He'd been James's friend since college, and had remained, a steadfast presence in my life even after James was gone. "You're looking well." As I prepared tea, Timothy unpacked several folders. "I've brought everything we discussed," he said. "The life insurance policy documents, the paperwork for accessing the funds, and information about setting up an account for your monthly expenses at Willow Creek." We spent the next hour going over the details. The life insurance policy that James had taken out had grown considerably, providing me with a comfortable nest egg. Not extravagant, but more than enough to secure my independence for years to come. I've also drawn up a new will, Timothy said, sliding a document across the table. As you requested. I scanned the document. My modest estate would be divided equally between Catherine and Michael, with a small provision for Amanda contingent upon her completing a vocational training program or obtaining a stable job for at least 1 year. This looks perfect, I said, signing at the bottom. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, tense calm. I continued my daily routines, cooking breakfast, tending to the laundry, watering Catherine's neglected houseplants, while secretly preparing for my departure. To my family, I presented a mask of quiet acceptance, occasionally nodding when Richard mentioned the nursing home, letting Catherine believe I had resigned myself to their plans. Behind this facade, however, I was methodically organizing my life. Each evening, I sorted through my belongings, deciding what to take to my new apartment and what to leave behind. Clothing, photographs, books, my mother's china, each item carefully evaluated and either packed in the suitcases hidden under my bed or set aside to be abandoned. One afternoon, as I was sorting through a box of photographs, Amanda appeared in my doorway. "What are you doing?" she asked, eyeing the stacks of photos on my bed. "Just organizing old memories," I replied, holding up a picture of James and me on our 20th anniversary. She hesitated, then stepped into the room. "Is that Grandpa?" I nodded. "Your grandfather was a handsome man." Amanda glanced at the photo, then at the neat piles I'd sorted. "Why are you doing this now?" I met her gaze steadily. "It seems like a good time to decide what's important." Something flickered across her face. Suspicion, perhaps, or the first inkling that I wasn't as compliant as her parents believed. But she said nothing more, just shrugged and left, the door closing softly behind her. That evening at dinner, I noticed Richard watching me more carefully than usual. "Evelyn," he said, setting down his fork, "I thought we might go visit Sunrise Meadows this weekend. Just to see the place. No decisions needed yet." I took a sip of water before answering. "That's not necessary, Richard." "Mom," Catherine interjected, "we really think you should see it before." "I won't be going to Sunrise Meadows or any other nursing home," I said quietly but firmly. The table fell silent. Even Michael, who usually kept his head down during these discussions, looked up. "Evelyn," Richard began, his businessman's voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd come to despise. "I understand you're reluctant, but—" "It's not reluctance," I interrupted. "It's a decision. My decision." Catherine exchanged a glance with Richard. "Mom, we're just trying to do what's best for everyone." "For everyone," I repeated, setting down my glass. "Or for yourselves," Amanda huffed. "Why do you have to make everything so difficult?" I turned to my granddaughter, studying her face, so like Catherine's at that age, pretty, but with a hardness around the eyes that Catherine had only developed in recent years. "Is that what you think I'm doing, Amanda? Making things difficult?" She looked away first. "I just meant—" "I know what you meant," I said gently. "And I understand. It's easier to see me as stubborn or ungrateful than to consider that I might have valid reasons for making my own choices." "What choices?" Richard asked, his tone sharp. "You keep talking about other arrangements but refuse to explain what that means." I dabbed my mouth with my napkin and stood gathering my plate. "You'll know soon enough. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm rather tired tonight." As I left the dining room, I heard Richard's low voice. "This is getting ridiculous, Catherine. We need to take more decisive action." I smiled to myself as I rinsed my plate at the sink. Let them plan. Let them strategize. In 4 days, I would be gone, and all their carefully constructed arguments would be meaningless. The next morning, I found Michael waiting for me in the kitchen. He was usually the first to leave the house, but today he sat at the table, a cup of coffee cooling in front of him. "Morning, Grandma," he said, watching me carefully. "Good morning, Michael. You're up early." He nodded, then asked quietly, "Are you really leaving?" I paused in the middle of filling the kettle. "What makes you think that?" "The way you've been going through your things, the conversations with that lawyer, the fact that you're not fighting. them about the nursing home anymore, just avoiding it. I set the kettle on the stove and turned to face my grandson. In that moment, I saw so much of James in him, the same thoughtful eyes, the same quiet perception. Yes, I admitted. I'm leaving. He nodded, unsurprised. When? Saturday. Where will you go? I studied him for a moment, considering whether to trust him with the truth. Willow Creek Retirement Community. It's an independent living facility, not a nursing home. Michael's face relaxed into a small smile. That sounds more like you. I returned his smile, feeling a rush of affection for this young man who had bothered to see me as a person. I've also taken a part-time position in their wellness center. Nothing strenuous, just a few hours a week using my nursing background. They're hiring you. Michael's smile widened. That's great, Grandma. Really great. It's just a small role, I said, but it feels good to be valued for my experience again. He nodded, understanding perfectly. Do you need help with moving? I could drive you. I felt a lump form in my throat at his simple offer of kindness. Thank you, Michael. That would be wonderful. Just tell me when and where, he said, standing to leave. At the doorway, he paused. They don't deserve you, you know. Any of them. Before I could respond, he was gone, his footsteps receding down the hallway. The days passed quickly after that. I maintained my facade of compliance, watching with quiet amusement as Richard and Catherine exchanged worried glances when they thought I wasn't looking. They had planned a surprise visit to Sunrise Meadows for Saturday. I overheard Richard telling Catherine they would present it as a simple outing, then once there, try to convince me to stay. Little did they know that by Saturday morning, my bags would be packed and Michael would be waiting to drive me to my new home. Friday evening arrived, my last night in Catherine's house. I made a special dinner, using the recipes that had always been family favorites. James's beloved pot roast, the garlic mashed potatoes Catherine had requested for every birthday as a child, the apple crumble that even Amanda complimented as we ate. I observed each of them, memorizing their faces, wondering when or if I would see them again after tomorrow. This is delicious, Mom, Catherine said, helping herself to more potatoes. What's the occasion? Does there need to be an occasion to enjoy a good meal together? I asked, smiling. Richard raised his glass. Well, whatever the reason, it's excellent. Thank you, Evelyn. I nodded, accepting the rare praise. Even Amanda seemed more relaxed than usual, chatting about a second interview she'd been called for. Only Michael knew the truth, meeting my eyes occasionally with a small, secretive smile. After dinner, as I washed the dishes, Catherine came to help, an unusual occurrence that might have warmed my heart just a few weeks ago. Now I recognized it for what it was, a belated attempt at connection before their planned intervention tomorrow. Mom, she said hesitantly, drying a plate with slow, careful movements. I hope you know that everything we're doing is because we care about you. I handed her another plate. I know you believe that, Catherine. She sighed. Why won't you even consider the nursing home? Just visit it with us tomorrow. That's all we're asking. I set down the dish I was washing and turned to face my daughter. Catherine, do you remember when you were 16 and wanted to go to that summer program for young writers? She blinked, thrown by the change of subject. The one in New York? Yes, but what does that have to do with... Your father said no. He thought it was too expensive, too far away, but I fought for you. I took extra shifts at the hospital to pay for it. Do you know why? She shook her head, bewildered. Because it was important to you, I said simply. Because even though you were only 16, I respected that you knew what you needed to grow, to be happy. Catherine looked down, her hands stilling on the dish towel. All I'm asking, I continued gently, is for the same respect now. To trust that I know what I need, what will make my remaining years meaningful, rather than just safe. But you're not 16, Mom, she protested weakly. After your stroke, Catherine, I interrupted, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. I would rather live 6 months on my own terms than 6 years being treated like a helpless child. I spent my life caring for others, your father, you, my patients. I don't regret a moment of it. But now, in these last years, I want to live for myself. Can you understand that? She was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I think so. But I'm still worried about you being alone. I touched her arm gently. I won't be alone. I'll be independent. There's a difference. After finishing the dishes, I said goodnight and retired to my room. I closed the door, took a deep breath, and pulled out the suitcases from under my bed. It was time. I woke before dawn on Saturday, my heart beating with a strange mixture of anticipation and sadness. This house had never truly felt like home. It was Catherine and Richard's space where I had merely been permitted to exist. But leaving still marked the end of something. The sky was just beginning to lighten as I dressed in the outfit I'd set. Aside for today, a simple blue dress, comfortable walking shoes, and the pearl necklace James had given me on our 30th anniversary. I moved quietly, not wanting to wake anyone yet, especially since Richard and Catherine would be expecting to take me to the nursing home later this morning. The last few items went into my handbag: James's pocket watch, my medication, the envelope, containing the letter I'd written to Catherine and Richard explaining my decision. I surveyed the room one final time. The bed was made, the surfaces cleared. I'd left most of the furniture and household items behind, taking only what was truly personal and irreplaceable. A soft knock at the door made me start. It was barely 6:30. Who could be awake? Grandma? Michael's quiet voice came through the door. Are you ready? I opened the door to find my grandson standing there, car keys in hand, his expression a mixture of determination and concern. I thought we should get an early start, he whispered. I nodded, grateful for his foresight. Just let me get my bags. Michael helped me carry my 2 suitcases down the stairs and out to his car, parked a little way down the street to avoid waking the household. The morning air was cool and fresh, with the promise of a beautiful spring day ahead. As Michael loaded my luggage into the trunk, I took one last look at Catherine's house. The manicured lawn, the carefully trimmed hedges, the spotless windows. So different from my own home that had once stood just a few blocks away, with its wild roses climbing the fence and vegetable gardens sprawling across the backyard. Ready, Grandma? Michael asked, holding the passenger door open for me. I smiled at him. Yes, I'm ready. The drive to Willow Creek was peaceful, the streets nearly empty in the early morning light. Michael didn't ask many questions, seeming to understand my need for quiet reflection. When we finally pulled up to the entrance of the retirement community, I felt a flutter of nervousness. Was I doing the right thing? The doubt evaporated the moment Margaret stepped out to greet us, her familiar face breaking into a wide smile. Evelyn, right on time. Margaret had been my colleague at the hospital for over 20 years before she took the position at Willow Creek. Now in her 60s, she still had the same energetic stride and warm smile that had comforted so many patients over the years. Margaret, I said, embracing her. It's so good to see you. Let me show you to your apartment, she said, then glanced at Michael. And this young man must be your grandson. Michael, he introduced himself, shaking her hand. I'm just the delivery service. Margaret laughed. Well, we're grateful for the delivery. Come on, I'll give you both the tour. The apartment was small, but bright, with large windows overlooking a courtyard garden. A kitchenette, living area, bedroom, and bathroom. Simple, but more than adequate for my needs. And just as Margaret had promised, a small patio door opened directly onto a garden plot, currently just bare earth but full of possibility. What do you think? Margaret asked as Michael set down my bags in the bedroom. It's perfect, I said, already imagining how I would arrange my few belongings, what flowers I would plant in that patch of earth outside. Michael explored the apartment, opening cupboards and checking the water pressure in the bathroom. It seems solid, he declared with the authority of someone who had once worked a summer job in construction. And the security looks good too. We have staff on site 24/7, Margaret assured him. And every apartment has an emergency call button, though most residents rarely need to use it. I could see Michael visibly relaxing, the worry lines around his eyes softening. And the wellness center where Grandma will be working? Margaret smiled. Just across the courtyard. I'll show you after we get Evelyn settled. As we unpacked my things, I felt a growing sense of rightness about my decision. This place wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, safe, and most importantly, it was mine. A space where I wouldn't be an afterthought or an inconvenience. Mom will be freaking out right about now, Michael said, glancing at his watch. It was nearly the time Catherine and Richard had planned to take me to Sunrise Meadows. She's probably knocking on your door, wondering why you're not answering. As if on cue, my phone rang. Catherine's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. Hello, Catherine. Mom? Her voice was high with panic. Where are you? We knocked on your door, but you didn't answer, and when we checked, your room was. Mom, where are you? I'm at my new home, I said calmly. What? What do you mean, new home? Her voice rose higher. Mom, what have you done? I've moved to Willow Creek Retirement Community. I left a letter explaining everything on the kitchen counter. There was a long silence. Then Catherine's voice, smaller now. You just left? Without saying goodbye? I felt a pang of guilt, quickly suppressed. I'm saying goodbye now, Catherine, and this isn't goodbye forever. You're welcome to visit me here anytime. But the nursing home, she began weakly, was never going to happen, I finished for her. I told you I had made other arrangements. Now you know what they are. Another long pause. Is Michael with you? His car is gone. Yes, he helped me move. He knew about this. Betrayal rang in her voice. He kept this from us? Don't blame Michael, I said firmly. He respected my wishes. That's all. Something you and Richard might consider doing as well. A muffled sound came through the phone, Richard's voice in the background, demanding answers. Then Catherine again. We're coming over there right now. Where is this place? That's not a good idea, I said. Not today. I need time to settle in. We can talk next week once everyone has had a chance to calm down. Calm down? Catherine nearly shouted. You disappear without warning after everything we've done for you, and you expect us to calm down? The unfairness of this statement, everything we've done for you, ignited a spark of anger in my chest. Everything you've done for me? Like spending the money from my house on cruises and kitchen remodels? Like planning to put me in a nursing home against my wishes? Like treating me as a burden rather than as the woman who raised you, who supported your dreams, who has been cooking your meals and cleaning your house for the past 2 years? Silence. I think we should talk next week, I repeated, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. Goodbye, Catherine. I ended the call before she could respond, then turned to find Michael and Margaret watching me with concern. Are you okay, Grandma? Michael asked. I took a deep breath, letting the tension flow out of my shoulders. Yes, I'm just fine. Margaret squeezed my arm. Family is complicated. Trust me, I've seen many residents go through this adjustment. It gets easier. I nodded, grateful for her understanding. I know it will, and I've made the right decision. Michael checked his watch again. I should probably go. Mom will be calling me next, demanding explanations. You don't have to tell them anything, I said, touching his hand. This was my decision, not yours. He smiled. I know, but I'm not sorry I helped you. You deserve better than what they were planning. After Michael left, Margaret helped me unpack the rest of my belongings, then showed me around the facility, the dining hall where residents could take meals if they didn't want to cook, the library with its comfortable armchairs and well-stocked shelves, the recreation room where various activities were held throughout the week. And this, she said finally, pushing open a door, is the wellness center. It was a bright, spacious room with several examination areas, a desk where records were kept, and a small pharmacy for dispensing routine medications. Much more modest than the hospital where I'd spent my career, but immaculately maintained. You'll start Tuesday, if that still works for you, Margaret said. Just 4 hours in the morning, mainly helping with health checks and medication management. Nothing too taxing, but your experience will be invaluable. I ran my hand along the edge of the desk, feeling a flutter of excitement. To be useful, again, to apply the skills I'd spent a lifetime developing. It was more than I'd dared hope for in these later years. It's perfect, I said. Thank you, Margaret, she smiled. Don't thank me. We're the ones getting a registered nurse with 40 years of experience. Now there's one more thing I want to show you. 4 days after I moved into Willow Creek, Amanda showed up at my door. I was returning from my first shift at the wellness center when I spotted her sitting on the bench outside. She looked different, less polished, more vulnerable, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Amanda, I said, surprised. I wasn't expecting visitors today. She stood quickly. I know, I probably should have called first. I can go if... No, please stay, I said, unlocking my door. Come in. I was just about to make some tea. My apartment was sparsely furnished, but already felt like home. My treasured photograph sat on the side table, my mother's quilt draped. Across the couch and fresh flowers brightened the dining area. Amanda stood awkwardly looking around. It's nice. Smaller than I expected. It's all I need, I replied, filling the kettle. Please sit down. She perched on the edge of the couch. Mom and Dad are really upset. Dad keeps saying you've been manipulated, and Mom cried all day Sunday. I'm sorry they're upset, but I wasn't manipulated. This was my decision, one I'd been planning for some time. But why didn't you tell anyone? Why just disappear like that? I turned to face her. Would it have made a difference if I'd told you? Would any of you have supported my choice instead of trying to talk me out of it? She looked down, her silence answering my question. That's why, I said gently. And I didn't disappear. I left a detailed letter, explaining everything. As I set the teapot on the table, Amanda finally asked the question I'd been expecting. Did you come here because of what I said? About you being just another mouth to feed? I sat beside her. No, not entirely. That hurt, yes, but it was just the final confirmation that my presence was viewed as a burden rather than a blessing. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean it, Grandma. I was just being stupid and selfish. Perhaps, I agreed, but words reveal thoughts. And your words revealed how I was seen, not as a person with value, but as an expense, an inconvenience. She wiped her eyes. I got fired from my new job after just 2 days. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. I deserved it. I was late both days and spent most of my time on my phone. She laughed bitterly. Mom and Dad don't know yet. I poured the tea. What will you do now? Amanda shrugged. I don't know. Find another job, I guess. Is that what you want? Or do you want to build a life with purpose? She stared into her tea. I don't know what that even means. It means finding work that fulfills you. It means becoming someone who contributes more to this world than they take from it. After a moment, she asked, How? I could use some help. Around here? The garden plot needs clearing and planting, and I'm not as strong as I used to be. You want me to garden? She asked incredulously. I want to offer you a job. Part-time, with fair pay. It would give you some income while you figure out your next steps. She looked suspicious. Is this charity? It's an exchange. Your labor for my payment. And perhaps you might discover something about yourself. What you're good at. What you enjoy. I don't know the first thing about gardening, she admitted. I smiled. Neither did I, once. But your grandfather taught me, and I can teach you. Why would you do this for me after what I said? Because I see something in you, Amanda. Beneath the entitlement, there's a young woman with potential. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try. The following week, Amanda arrived in old jeans, ready to work. To my surprise, she was a quick learner and harder worker than I'd expected. By the end of the day, the garden plot was cleared, ready for planting. Same time tomorrow? She asked. If you're up for it, I said. She nodded firmly. I'll be here. And she was. Day after day she came. We planted tomatoes and peppers, zinnias and marigolds, herbs and strawberries. I watched her change, her movements more confident, her questions more thoughtful. She stopped checking her phone constantly, more engaged with the soil than with social media. 1 month later, Catherine stood at my door looking uncertain. Mom, she said, her voice catching. Can I come in? I stepped aside. The apartment looked different now, more lived in. Through the patio door, the garden showed signs of life, green shoots pushing through the soil. Catherine's eyes widened. This is not what I expected. What did you expect? I asked. She shrugged. Something more institutional, I guess. Less personal. That's what a nursing home would have been, I said. This is a home. She noticed the photographs on the side table and picked up one of her father. I miss him sometimes. I miss him every day, I replied. But I've learned to carry that missing is part of who I am. Amanda told me she's been working for you. Yes, in the garden mostly. She's doing quite well. Catherine shook her head in disbelief. I hardly recognize her anymore. She's up early talking about horticulture classes, hasn't asked for money in weeks. I smiled. She's discovering who she can be when she applies herself to something meaningful. And you did that, Catherine said. You saw something in her that none of us did. She looked out at the garden where tomato plants were beginning to climb their stakes. Mom, I owe you an apology. What we did was wrong. Using your money that way, then trying to put you in a home like you were a problem to be solved. She turned to face me, eyes filling with tears. I'm so sorry.